On tonight's summary of the Israel-Hamas War, Day 215. Al-Qassam brigades announced the death of an Israeli hostage in captivity, stating she died from injuries resulting from an IDF missile strike. The IDF invades Rafah and takes over the Rafah crossing on the Gazan side, bombings and airstrikes reported throughout the city. Continuing escalations between Israel and Hezbollah, 2 IDF soldiers are killed in a Hezbollah drone attack. IDF retaliations kill 5 Hezbollah and Palestinian Islamic Jihad operatives in Lebanon. Hamas's communications ministry in the Gaza Strip says a mass grave was discovered near Al-Shifa Hospital, raising concerns about other mass graves in the area. The United States issues unprecedented warnings to Israel, stating that it will stop the transfer of offensive weaponry to Israel if a full-scale invasion of Rafah is carried out. Hello everyone, I am Alon Burstein, visiting assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Israel Institute fellow at the University of California, Irvine. Here I bring you the latest highlights from the Israel-Hamas War. It's currently the evening of May 8th, 2024 in the United States, the morning of May 9th, 2024 in the Middle East. I'm going to start with a recap from the last few days with regards to the Rafah invasion and the hostage situation. I will say they put out a special video about this on May 7th if people want more details. The recap from the last few days. On May 6th, after the Hamas delegation had left Cairo with no results with regards to the hostage negotiations, and this came days after Israel had issued an ultimatum to Hamas about this, the IDF began an invasion of the southeastern parts of Rafah. Hours after ordering Palestinian civilians to evacuate the regions, the IDF invaded with 2 different divisions along the Egyptian border, eventually taking over the Rafah crossing from the Gazan side. The invasion was accompanied with massive airstrikes. According to some reports, over 100 targets were bombed as part of the invasion, and substantial fighting along the southeastern parts of the border. The IDF now holds the Rafah crossing, which has been disconnected from the roads of Salahuddin, which is the main entry point from Egypt into the Gaza Strip. As the IDF began the invasion, the Hamas leadership made public statements stating that they are accepting the hostage deal and the ceasefire negotiations, leading to major international outcry against Israel to stop the invasion. Israel declared that this is a stalling tactic and that Hamas has not actually accepted the deal but instead proposed an entirely different deal, and proceeded until it took over the crossing and the entire Dahania region in and around the southeastern parts of Rafah. Later in the day, in the evening between May 6th and May 7th, U.S. President Biden had a conversation with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. While what was published was that the conversation focused on reopening the Kerem Shalom crossing for the entrance of humanitarian aid, later in the day, White House National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby stated that Israel clarified to the United States that the Rafah operation is limited and is aimed at cutting off Hamas's smuggling of weapons and money. At the same time, Israel succumbed to U.S. pressure and agreed to send a delegation to Cairo to continue negotiations in response to Hamas saying they have agreed to the deal, while Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant stated that the operation in Rafah will stop either when Hamas is destroyed or when the first hostage is released. Regarding what has been published about the actual deal that Hamas says it accepted and where things lie, while Hamas stated that it agreed to the original framework that was negotiated, leaks have emerged showing several critical changes that Hamas made in the initial deal that was negotiated between Israel and Egypt, and that Hamas is now saying it has agreed to. Among others, while the framework that was initially negotiated of releasing 33 hostages in the first phase of the deal is maintained, Hamas added that those hostages can be either alive or dead hostages, demanding the same amount of Palestinian prisoners regardless of the state of those hostages. In addition, the IDF redeployment in the second phase of the deal is entirely different than was originally negotiated, and Hamas has also insisted on freedom of movement of all Palestinians in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, specifically adding that this would include armed Palestinians as well, i.e. allowing Hamas to send its armed units back to the northern parts of the Strip. In addition, in the third phase of the deal, Hamas added clauses outlining a 5-year rebuilding plan and removing the siege on Gaza after a complete ceasefire and IDF withdrawal. So again, while this does maintain the initial framework of the 3-phase deal, starting with the release of 33 hostages, then an IDF redeployment, and various different things like that, Hamas added critical nuanced differences that Israel have said have changed the deal entirely, and Israel is not agreeing to it. Where negotiations stand right now, the Israeli delegation arrived in Cairo on May 7th, and according to reports, the delegation has a very minimal mandate to negotiate, instead can just ask clarifying questions. In Israel, there's a lot of reports that everyone is very pessimistic in the government, that they're not even giving a chance to the deal and just sending the delegation to ask questions. Meanwhile, CIA Director William Barnes arrived in Israel and held high-profile meetings with the Israeli Prime Minister, the head of the Mossad, the Shabak, all trying to pressure them into the deal. From there, he is traveling to Cairo to continue the negotiations. The White House has put out several different statements saying that the versions of Israel and Hamas in the negotiations are close enough, such that they could be negotiated and the gaps can be bridged, i.e. what the United States is calling for is for Israel to recognize that if Hamas has said yes to a version, that can be used as a launching pad for negotiations, instead of Israel saying Hamas has rejected what was initially agreed upon and continuing the Rafah invasion. Wall Street Journal reported on May 8th that Hamas has added several corrections to its proposal and that negotiations are underway. Hours after that report, however, a member of Hamas's political bureau, Izzat Rishak, stated that Hamas will not make any more adjustments to the proposed deal, i.e. Hamas is saying that is their final word and there is no need to negotiate any further. Regarding the situation in Rafah right now, the IDF is still maintaining its position in the city, although one report in the Israeli Haaretz news site stated that Israel intends on removing Hamas from controlling the crossing, and after that, Israel plans on handing over control of the crossing to a private U.S. security company that specializes in war zones. According to the report, Israel has informed the United States that it does not plan on holding on to the crossing itself. Meanwhile, as tens of thousands of Palestinians are reportedly evacuating Rafah, Palestinian sources reported on May 8th that there were substantial bombings and airstrikes throughout Rafah, not just on the southeastern part. Again, this may be the IDF paving the way for a further invasion, remains to be seen. Regarding the response in the United States to the fact that Israel carried out an, albeit minimal, but nonetheless invasion of Rafah after the United States has been calling on Israel not to carry out this invasion for months already, it was reported already on May 6th that the United States is withholding a weapons shipment that is destined for Israel, and the Wall Street Journal added that these are weapons that turn quote-unquote dumb bombs into quote-unquote smart bombs, i.e. adding guiding systems. On May 8th, the rhetoric changed and escalated. President Biden was giving an interview to CNN, and he stated that if Israel carries out a major invasion into Rafah, he will order the stopping of weapons transfers to Israel. In the interview, Biden added that U.S. weapons have been used to kill civilians in densely populated areas, and stated that he is fully committed to Israel's security, but that he draws a distinction between defensive weaponry such as Iron Dome and the ability of Israel to defend itself and retaliate against far enemies, i.e. Iran, and more offensive weaponry such as artillery shells and missiles. In addition to this, earlier in the day, the U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller stated that the U.S. is reviewing stalling other weapons shipments, stating that while the U.S. is committed to Israel's security, it has expressed concerns for the civilian population in Rafah, specifically stating, and I quote, "in light of Israel's previous actions." So where we are right now, the negotiations are underway, although Hamas is saying they're not going to make any more changes, and in Israel it is reported that the delegation is not really permitted to negotiate. CIA director is going to try to pressure all sides to come to the table. In addition, Israel is controlling the southeastern parts of Rafah and is also controlling the Rafah crossing. There are reports that there are more bombings in the center of Rafah. However, the IDF has not carried out an invasion of the city as of yet. Other news related to the hostage situation from the last few days. Lior Rudayev, who is an Israeli civilian who's on the kidnapped list since October 7th, has now been confirmed dead by Israel. According to reports, Israel has confirmed that he was killed, in fact, on October 7th, and his body was kidnapped into the Gaza Strip as part of the attack. According to the report, the information is based on video images that the IDF has retrieved from the Gaza Strip in the last weeks. With that, the amount of hostages that Israel has confirmed are dead in the Gaza Strip are 36 out of the 132 hostages that remain. In addition to this, on May 7th, the Al-Qassam Brigades, that is the military wing of Hamas, published a video stating that Judy Weinstein, who is the oldest female hostage still in captivity, was killed in an IDF bombing in the Gaza Strip. The video states that Weinstein was held in a building with another hostage, and that both were injured in a bombing that occurred a month ago. The video adds that the movement tried to treat her wounds, but that the IDF has rendered hospitals in the Gaza Strip non-functional, and that she eventually died of the wounds. The video also shows a question mark regarding the other hostage that they say she was with. In the past, Hamas has released these videos, and often question marks meant that they were going to publish that someone else has died. However, at this point, that is unclear. That is another video that the Al-Qassam Brigades put out with regards to one of the hostages. Moving on to more information from the Gaza Strip in the last few days, there were barrages of rockets and mortars that were fired from the Gaza Strip and within the Gaza Strip in the past days. Rockets targeted the areas of Ein HaShlosha, Kisufim, and Re'im. There were at least 5 rockets that were intercepted in that barrage. In addition, there were other barrages of rockets that were fired towards the areas of Eshkol, including the areas of Dekel, Yeted, Sde Avraham, and Chulit. Mortars were also fired towards Kerem Shalom, and specifically the Kerem Shalom crossing. On May 8th, a barrage of 8 rockets was fired from Rafah towards the areas of Shlomit, and another barrage towards the Eshkol region. No one was injured in all of these barrages. Most of these were intercepted, the others fell in open areas. Regarding the fighting in the Gaza Strip, the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, on May 7th, there was substantial artillery bombardment that was reported in the different areas around Gaza City, specifically in the areas of Jabalia refugee camp and Darj Tufah. In addition to this, the IDF reported detonating 2 Hamas attack tunnels in the Beit Hanun region, also in the outskirts of Gaza City. In addition to all this, Ahmed Ali, who is the naval commander of Hamas's naval forces, was assassinated in an airstrike in Gaza City on May 8th. He was reportedly in charge of developing Hamas's naval capabilities and has been very active in the ongoing fighting in the Netzarim corridor, that is the area that divides the Gaza Strip from north to south that the IDF is maintaining. In the central parts of the Gaza Strip, there were also major bombardments that were reported. Between May 6th and May 7th, there were major airstrikes that were reported in the Al Bureid refugee camp, and on May 8th, substantial airstrikes were reported in the central camps. There was also one report that stated that the IDF has been amassing a lot of armored units in the central parts of the Gaza Strip, possibly in preparation of an invasion of that area. However, I will state that that report was only quoting forces on the ground, eyewitnesses who saw this, and not any official source in the IDF or any other reputable news site. So at this point, it is a rumor. However, I am bringing it because with these airstrikes and these extra artillery fire, this could be in laying the foundation for a larger attack. We'll find out more in the coming days. Regarding casualties, 1 IDF soldier is reported killed in the Gaza Strip since my last report 3 days ago, bringing the total number of IDF soldiers killed in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began to 267. In addition, 1 IDF soldier is reported injured in the Gaza Strip, bringing the total number of IDF soldiers injured in the Gaza Strip since the invasion began to 1,610. The Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip is reporting that 161 Palestinians were killed since my last report 3 days ago, bringing the total number of Palestinians killed in the Gaza Strip since the war began to 34,844. 78,404 Palestinians were reported injured in the Gaza Strip since the war began. Some reports regarding the humanitarian situation in the last several days. Hamas's Ministry of Communications reported in the last days that a mass grave has been discovered around the Al-Shifa hospital, stating that at least 49 bodies have been retrieved from this grave. It's important to note that this is not a report of the Palestinian Health Ministry in the Gaza Strip that is considered much more reliable, but rather a report of the Ministry of Communications of Hamas, which is known to often not report things accurately. At the same time, several pictures emerged showing images of this mass grave, so it is possible that there is more credibility to the story. Either way, right now, this is reported as another mass grave that is found around Al-Shifa Hospital, in addition to others that were found in the area since the invasion began. Other news, the Kerem Shalom crossing, that is the southern crossing between Gaza and Israel where humanitarian aid flows in, has become less functional in the last several days. Hamas fired rockets at the crossing on May 5th, and since then it has been opened, but different reports state that no trucks have entered. So right now, according to reports, it is open. However, no reports have stated that any trucks have managed to enter through that crossing. Possibly it was damaged in that mortar attack by Hamas. Unclear at this point. In addition to this, on May 7th, the Pentagon announced the completion of the construction of the floating pier in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip. The pier is supposed to enable the activation of the maritime corridor between Cyprus and the Gaza Strip, i.e. a direct corridor between the EU and Gaza to allow aid to flow in directly to the northern parts of the Strip. The pier has been constructed in 2 sections, and their attachment to shore is now ready. The teams are reportedly awaiting for weather conditions to permit it before they attach it to the shore. Other news, following the IDF's taking over of the Gazan side of the Rafah crossing, UNRWA stated that the shutting down of the crossing is going to exacerbate the prevailing hunger in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, specifically referencing the need to allow fuel trucks to continuously enter the Strip through the Rafah crossing. At this point, the crossing is closed. However, once again, there was a report that the IDF does not plan on holding on to this crossing. Remains to be seen if the IDF is going to coordinate with Egypt the reopening of the crossing or what exactly it intends to do, at least in the immediate period before things stabilize in the city. In addition, amidst the ongoing operation in Rafah, the Abu Yusuf al-Najjar hospital in the city has been completely evacuated. Pictures emerged from there. It was not reported this was an order by the IDF or not. In the past, wherever the IDF has entered an area, either in Gaza City or in Khan Yunis, it has ordered the evacuation of hospitals before entering them. Remains to be seen what is going to happen in the Abu Yusuf al-Najjar hospital in Rafah. Some news from the West Bank from the last several days. There was a major IDF operation that took place in the areas of Tulkarem, lasting over 20 hours. 6 Palestinians were reportedly arrested, and 1 Palestinian was killed in a gun battle with IDF soldiers. 3 weapons labs were reportedly destroyed, and explosives were uncovered. Over 60 structures were raided during that operation. In addition, substantial IDF activity was reported throughout different areas of the West Bank, including El Bira in Ramallah, Hawara, Dahaira, this is near Hebron. A total of 8 Palestinians were arrested specifically in the last 24 hours. In addition to this, there were also raids that were reported in the last days in the areas of Yabed near Jenin, Nablus, Asira Kabilia, and Bethlehem. Some political news relating to the future of the West Bank. Israel's finance minister and head of the religious Zionism party, Bezalel Smotrich, sent a letter to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu today, stating that in his role as minister in the defense ministry, that is another one of Smotrich's roles in addition to finance minister, he's not the defense minister, but a minister in the defense ministry, he stated that he is not willing to put up with the de facto settlement freeze in the West Bank. He was referring to the official authorized settlements that is different than the unofficial settlements that are constructed without any Israeli approval, stating that these official settlements cannot advance their construction plans due to the need for governmental approval. Smotrich gave an effective ultimatum to Netanyahu, stating that Netanyahu either needs to state in writing that he opposes settlement expansion and give this to Smotrich, which would be politically very damaging for Netanyahu, or if he does not do that within 4 days, Smotrich will see this as an agreement to restart settlement expansion in the West Bank, something that will also be very damaging for Netanyahu internationally. Remains to be seen how that develops. Some developments from the northern parts of Israel and southern parts of Lebanon. In the last several days, there have been continuous escalations between the sides that started already a week ago. Massive barrages of missiles and rockets were fired by Hezbollah into Israel, and massive retaliations of the IDF were carried out in Lebanon. Regarding the firing by Hezbollah, 2 IDF soldiers, Dan Kamhaji and Nachman Natan Hertz, were killed by a suicide Hezbollah drone near Metula on May 6. In addition, there were many barrages of rockets and missiles that were fired in the last several days, with some of the most intense fired on May 7th. Barrages targeted the areas of Kiryat Shmona, Kfar Giladi, Avivi, Margaliot. There were also rockets fired towards Yarun, Ramon Naftali, Hila, and Goren. Anti-tank missiles also hit a house in Metula, causing substantial damage. In addition to this, on May 7th, Hezbollah sent at least 6 suicide drones towards the northern parts of Israel, some causing damage and some being intercepted by the IDF. Earlier drones on that day also crashed into the area of Reches Ramim, causing a fire in the region. Regarding IDF activity, in the last several days there was continuous major IDF retaliations against Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. These include airstrikes targeting areas in Bleida, Marun Aras, Yarun, and Al Hiam. Hezbollah infrastructure was also targeted in the area of the Hammam village, and the launching sites were struck in Ita Sha'ab. Major artillery fire was also reported in the Shaba region between May 6th and May 7th. In addition to this, on May 8th, 5 simultaneous IDF attacks were reported, including against military structures of the Radwan force in Jabal Razlan. Other attacks also targeted Hezbollah structures and infrastructure in those same villages that were targeted in the previous days. In addition, over 20 airstrikes and artillery bombardments were reported in the Ramia region. According to the IDF, these were attacking Hezbollah structures and infrastructure. In addition to all this, the IDF stated that it assassinated 3 Hezbollah operatives in Al Hiam on May 8th, however did not report their identity. Later reports emerged from Lebanon stating that 5 people were killed in IDF attacks, including 3 members of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Lebanon, as well as 2 Hezbollah operatives. Unclear if that is that same report during that same assassination, or if these were other casualties as a result of the IDF attacks. Before concluding, some thoughts regarding what is going to be a possible response that will heavily affect the IDF's operation in Rafah. The international court system has not said a word yet, and none of the prosecutors or the countries that are involved have said anything yet, but we're likely to see that changing in the coming days. It is very likely that South Africa is going to appeal to the International Court of Justice regarding the case that it has against Israel on the charge of genocide, and ask for another injunction to force Israel to stop the war due to its invasion of Rafah. Remains to be seen if the South Africa does that, and if that does happen, if such an injunction would be issued, it would be major blow to Israel and practically crippling its ability to continue the war. Again, that at this point is speculation, but we will likely see that in the coming days. In addition, there were reports in the last several weeks that there's a lot of fear in Israel's leadership that the ICC, the International Criminal Court, is going to issue arrest warrants for different members of Israel's leadership, including Prime Minister Netanyahu. Right now, that hasn't happened yet. However, the case is being debated and is expected to give its results in the coming days or weeks. Again, it is possible that if the ICC does issue those warrants, or even if it does not, that will have its own effect on the war. Remains to be seen how things develop. If you find these reports informative, please do remember to hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications if you want to know when reports come out. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. That is my highlights from the last several days. Thanks for watching.